Judges 7 through 9, the stories of Gideon and his son Abimelech. The location of the story is really where we left off with Deborah and Barak. In fact, that's Mount Tabor, so that's within sight of the entire story, really, of Gideon as well. We're up in northern Israel, just west of the Sea of Galilee. We begin with the man Gideon, an otherwise unknown man. He's out threshing wheat in a winepress, and he meets a being that's called in the text the messenger of Yahweh. He wonders who this is, and by the time the story's over, he realizes this is a divine being. Again, he brings fire out of a rock. This divine being, this messenger, speaks for Yahweh, and he says, I want you to do two things. I want you to destroy your dad's altar. And I take that to mean that his dad, Joash, was not a godly man or not a Yahwist, and so he's asked to destroy that altar and rebuild another one dedicated to Yahweh. But the second issue, and it's certainly the bigger one, is to handle the Midianite oppression. They had been controlling this upper area of Galilee for the last 7 years, and God said, I want you to be the one to lead a campaign against the Midianites. So we start the story really of this campaign with 135,000 Midianites encamped just south of the hill of Moreh. And when Gideon calls for a conscripted army, 32,000 men from 4 different tribes show up. Well, God says, that's too many. I don't want you to take credit for this. So he says, tell everyone who wants to go home, go home. And so 22,000 men turn and leave. Of the 10,000 left, God says, that's still too many. So what I want you to do is take them down to a local spring, still there, in Harod, and watch how they drink. And so whoever put their hand up to their mouth was to be selected to be the army, and only 300 did that. So now what is that? Less than 1% of the original army is left. 300 men against a literal sea of Midianites to the north of them in this valley. This is the Jezreel Valley. Well, as they're preparing for battle, Gideon goes across to presumably scout out how the battle will go one night. And he hears or overhears a Midianite tell another friend that he had a dream that Gideon won. And again, these dreams are omens in many ways in the ancient world. So Gideon comes back, he's encouraged, and here's the plan that he hatches, I'm sure with God's assistance, with these 300 men. He goes across around midnight, and he divides his warriors into 3 groups, and in an apparent way of surrounding or semi-surrounding this sleeping enemy. They're not carrying any weapons. They're carrying a horn in the left hand and a torch covered by a potsherd or a pottery jar in the right hand. And at Gideon's signal, they blow the horn, smash the pottery, and light their torches, which would be this light and sound sensation of being overrun by a great enemy. And that's exactly how the Midianites interpret it. They begin killing each other, mass pandemonium, and they run, led by their 2 kings, southeast all the way down to the Dead Sea, where Gideon himself executes their kings. Before Gideon dies, and by the way, there will be 40 years now of peace after the death of Gideon, but before he dies, there's this little odd story of him refusing to be the king of Israel, of the northern tribes, but also he makes an ephod out of gold. An ephod was a way to divine the will of the gods in that day, one of the ways. And apparently that shows that, again, as godly or as dedicated as Gideon was to Yahweh, he still wasn't sure how to divine Yahweh's will, it seems. It becomes a problem later on in the story of Israel, we're told. This ephod becomes an idol, literally. The story in chapter 9 is just basically that, and it's a sad story, the son, one of the 71 sons of Gideon, he had many wives apparently, he had 71 sons, and one of them is Abimelech. Abimelech kills the other 70 stepbrothers he has and becomes the king or the ruler of Shechem down south. And just quickly, to end the story, he is just a wicked man, and a woman drops a millstone out of the wall window and kills him when he's in battle. Well, what's the final thought on this? Certainly shows that the battle is the Lord's. We have no doubt about that, the way the battle goes. It shows again that we're asking the question, which Elohim at this point? We're not really even in a time period. It sounds like that we're worrying about Levitical law. I mean, that's out the window at this point. We're back to the issue of which Elohim do you worship? It also shows you cannot pass on your disloyalty, the dad to the son, and you can't pass on your loyalty from this dad to this son. I mean, again, loyalty to Yahweh is going to be an individual choice. Lastly, we wonder sometimes at Gideon's indecision, right? The fleece. He put out the fleece twice, asking God, "Are you really wanting me to do this?" I don't take that to be a necessarily bad thing when it comes to the issue of tamim, as we've used that word, wholehearted devotion to Yahweh, as opposed to any other deity. That's what he certainly had. There's no evidence that Gideon ever doubted which God to worship, even though he had a personal nervousness going into war on several levels. In fact, listen to Hebrews 11:32. What more shall I say? Time would fail me to tell of, and think of all the list. Notice who comes first. Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, and Samuel.